Well, Jill Rutter is Programme Director at the Institute for Government and is an experienced former senior civil servant, having worked in the Treasury No. 10 and the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. And Jill is here with me now to explain about the transition of power and how it'll work. I mean, you've witnessed this first-hand, Jill, and in a sense what I've read out is the sort of public choreography, isn't it? But there are all sorts of changes behind the scenes. Tell us what will be going on in No. 10 to start with.
So, first off, in No. 10, the staff there who will have become quite close to the Prime Minister during her tenure, because it's a very small place, so you get to know the Prime Minister quite well. So they'll first of all be sort of going through the emotions of saying goodbye to the Prime Minister, and then the Prime Minister, as you just said, will go off to the palace. And then they have very little time to greet the new Prime Minister. And sort of one of the really interesting things, there have been talks going on already between the Cabinet Secretary, Sir Mark Sedwill, and both the leadership candidates to say, actually, how are you going to run this show? Who are you going to bring with you? And things like that. So there have been some preparations done, but there are then immediate sort of, first day issues, handing over, making sure the Prime Minister is sort of up to speed with the sort of detail of his responsibilities, the man with the nuclear codes and all that sort of thing. And then, as you rightly said, the really immediate task in hand, first of all, the Prime Minister makes those remarks on the steps of Downing Street, goes inside, is ushered inside, meets Principal Private Secretary, meets the Cabinet Secretary, they take him inside, meets the staff, but then he'll get down to the business of cabinet making and announcing those key appointments. What we don't know is how quick he'll be about that and which will go first, and whether he will want to keep it for a sort of, when I was there, it used to be, you wanted to make your big announcements for the 6 o'clock news, but now we see everything being announced on Twitter, almost sort of real-time commentary, so it's probably going to be more like that.
And how will people be feeling about their own positions at the moment? Does the arrival of a new Prime Minister cause anxiety?
So it's very different. In Downing Street, there are people who are affected very differently. So the civil servants will assume they will continue, at least for some time after a new Prime Minister. It may not be that long. Some of them may want to go, but generally they are there. And one of the sort of principles of our civil service is continuity. It's there as a permanent civil service. So one administration goes, new one comes in, civil service stays on. That's the sort of general rule. Other people who've been working in No. 10 are there specifically to serve Theresa May, those are the special advisors, and they all basically go instantly. Some may be invited back by the new Prime Minister, so it's possible that the new Prime Minister will say, well, actually, that person is not an area where I have big differences with Theresa May, that person knows what they're doing, and I will reappoint them, but technically those people go. Within departments, there are very few special advisors. Ministers only have 2, maybe 3 special advisors. So in departments, it's basically the civil service who will be there to welcome a new Prime Minister. And again, the sort of big continuity is provided by the 2 people that new ministers meet. That's their permanent secretary, the official head of the department, and the person who will be running their office, the principal private secretary. And they will be watching like hawks to see actually when does that new minister, they'll get calls from Downing Street saying we're about to appoint this person. They will be waiting to see when they turn up, because one of your big nightmares is that the new minister turns up at the department's not ready, security guards don't let them in and things like that. So that happens to more obscure ministers than the big hitters, but they're sort of watching and waiting and hope the car brings them to the right place.
And is this transition period strange? Because people must build up loyalties to the people that they're working for.
It is strange, but obviously people have had quite a lot of notice that there is going to be a change, and some of the changes that we're expecting to see have been quite well trailed. The Treasury knows it's going to get a new Chancellor. The Justice Department knows that David Gauke probably isn't going to hang on. Of course, that assumes Boris Johnson wins. Maybe it would all be different if Jeremy Hunt wins tomorrow. But some people will be assuming a change. Others won't be sure. Others might think, and have been trying to read the runes a bit. I was speaking to one civil servant last week who said, well, 10 days ago we thought he was definitely going, but he seems to be a bit more interested in our plans about what's going to happen in a couple of weeks' time. So maybe now we're thinking maybe he's going to stay, but we might get new functions in the department. So that's another thing people will be looking out for. I think one of the things that is really most difficult is if people think there's a big change of direction. So, for example, go back to the Treasury where I used to work. The Treasury to Boris Johnson has been the sort of temple of Remain. He may very well appointed Chancellor takes a very different view about the impact on the economy, the prospects for a no-deal Brexit and things like that. And a lot of Treasury officials will be wondering actually, what the new Chancellor is going to make of them as much as what do they make of the new Chancellor. So that's always quite a tense time, trying to gauge both the policy agenda, getting onto that wavelength to understand the big differences, but also the personal style. I was at the Treasury when we had a very difficult transition from Ken Clarke to Gordon Brown. Not that they were massively different on policy, but the personal style was absolutely oceans apart, and it took us a long time to work that out.
Jill, very good to talk to you. Thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for coming in. Jill Rutter there.